So now, the funny thing is, although there's much more material in the French one, the British one is much heavier, and I reckon it is not due to the starch, to the plies or the fabric in itself, but rather more the starching technique. And I do think that this would have used what Helen calls the chemist method, or very similar mode of doing it, as the French did very differently. But as I said, although there are no marks there, because there are still marks of sizes, and in view of how well it is purely done, how there's not this thing. When I first received that, I had doubts that it might have been celluloid or contain some fake material, because it is so immaculately done, just like the British one. And this would be extremely hard and difficult to do it at home, because it simply came in a box, in a factory box, clearly with two other identical ones. This is clearly a factory color, but I have not marked it because the ownership is on the box. The brand, well, the brand is not actually on the box, which is odd. People really did not really care. Maybe was it some, you know, counterfeiting? I mean, a fake brand, like non-copyrighted brand, whatever. But this one, so the brand is there. I mean, I guess it is Ashley. And that's the reason for which the Ashley is sort of fading away, because this was clearly restarched at least once, but in a factory. Why do I know that this is made? Yeah, because we know from there, simply proof. And clearly both were starched factory-wise, but the French manner, which probably used wax, or perhaps some type of soap, probably did not use the borax, which makes it heavier in my experience. Having restarched one of the French ones, although it was not that one, it was part of the same box, but actually it was another brand or another period, or the one that actually fitted me. And I started using the chemist method upon a few occasions, and yes, it was heavier. Was it? It was clearly not as light as that, but as heavy as this. It was very hard, and they each had their own unique methods of making starch. This clearly is super stiff. They must have added a lot of borax in there, and or turpentine, and or kerosene, and or gasoline. And all the intricate difference is that French collar, see at the back, the buttonhole there is horizontally slit like at the front. But for the British one, which I also noticed in British ones, even until today, the ones made by Lucas, or that the very Barker companies makes all the colors and provide, for example, such companies as Darcy Clothing and all, they often have, almost, if not near all the time, have a vertical slit. I think this will be more practical, because often the collar has to be worn for multiple reasons after the shed has been put on. That could be varying reasons. Sometimes when the shed is put on, often while it falls whilst in the putting, so it is quite annoying. It might fall onto a dead floor or get damaged in a wrinkle whilst in the falling. And to pass it through the style hole, I reckon, I never tried one with a vertical slit, but I reckon this would be easier. I think the collar has been worn once since it has been restarted, because it is just yellow. Not the wool collar is yellow with the edge. It is a bit yellowed, unlike that one, which was better conserved. But also it has a bit of yellow on the sides there. I think you must have worn it once, at least a bit, and this has clearly been gapped open. So was it fresh from restarching, especially from the factory? I think this would be closed again. And it's hard to know. It could also be more yellow because that was not as well kept, and or because the color could be older. So, although I actually think this one is older. Now, yes, why would it, and I think also what is more practical is the main reason why I just thought of it now. I must have thought of it in advance, but had forgotten about it. Is really for certain, because that was the collar can only go up and down, but it cannot really go up and down since the buttonhole starts at the very edge of the collar, so it cannot go down at least, but it can go up, I guess, a bit like that. But whereas with a horizontally slit opened buttonhole, it might go like this, you know, once attached onto and even one's button in the front. Now, before going into the Celluloid color, I wanted to try to date this one, which is very hard. Some people are experts at fonts and or even laundry marks and all, and in such a case it would be very easy to date. Though, one would really just have to be an expert at that font, or this thing here, which is probably the original brand of the color that created the color, or the teller. A lot of colors were actually made by self-employed tellers or whatever, not actual factory mass-produced brand. So, because knowing the font, imagine I was an expert at font, I'm not, and could nail that to 1913 or that one. It does not really mean anything, because it narrows down, but really this could be a font, this could have been made 20 years prior, but then not worn or hardly, so still in great condition, and suddenly 20 years later somebody finds it at the bottom of the box and starts welling it and then re-laundering it, and so it would not really do anything. Whereas if somebody could nail that to 1913 or at least a decade, either of those, probably especially that one, which would be even harder to nail down because this is a very precise and a very neutral font, probably still used today, then really one could nail down the date the color had been manufactured. But also there are other methods that people like me, specifically like me, can use to actually date a color, or at least narrow it down to 20, 40 or even 10-year period, and taking everything into account. So I don't know if that came into a box or whatever. The seller just sold it. I think he said it was restarched, which is clearly a lie. Well, it was not said, it said it was in good starch condition, which clearly relatively is. It's not perfect like that one, this is very exceptional because it was in the original box. And it has never been worn. It had never been worn, it's just new. So, for all intents and purposes, that is a new color. There is a bit of dirt there, because I think that might have been the one I tried putting on, but I was clean at that time, so this might date from just the shaving into the box. Also, it was kept in that box with that paper wrapping. This is my needed color, which I already talked about, so I will just take it out just for comparisons later on. But anyhow, so this one is older, I'm quite certain. Why is it so old? It is very hard to date a box and all, but I guess because there's not a photograph there, because of the quality and the type and style of drawing, the box in itself, the sticker, the font at the back, some degrees, the precise type, size of color. So not just the height, everything has to be taken into consideration. And surely that height, first of all, is clearly higher than the wing color. So one could argue they had different heights every year in every country, in every region, for every person. So basically, in translation, that would mean, for example, an average upper middle class or even middle class or upper class chap, let one say British, from the precise year 1891 in the precise Oxford city, he would in all likelihood have had different heights of colors. Well, yes and no, it depends. Very few people had the very extreme ones, but in the 1890s and early 1900s, perhaps until at least 1910, usually heights were about that height. Obviously, it would differ, especially with a bespoke made collar, which that one clearly is not, since it came in a factory box, remember. But most collars were not even most cloth. Most collars, first of all, were not actually cloth with starch like these, because these were the most expensive to maintain, but and hard and long to maintain. But at least what was I saying? Most collars, whether cloth or whatever, whether even sewn in or removable, were approximately that height during the 1890s, and then they grew lower, especially since this is a wing collar. Do not forget that wing collars, removable collars in a wing variety, remained popular for far longer than any other types, especially than I will show one. I purchased, as I said, 2 collars in the past from that same seller. One of them, which I already showed in another playlist, the other one is practically